Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, rovers. Today's video is about Septimont's Ragnarok. Now the chances are you've probably heard of the term Ragnarok before, but even if you don't know what it is, don't worry because we are going to cover that today and how it may be applying to Septimont. There are a lot of correlations between Ragnarok and Septimont, which is why we're speculating that Ragnarok is the main theme of Septimont's storyline. Now I originally thought, and that is why this is a double upload with the other video, that Ragnarok or the Dawn of Ragnarok will be the theme for Fusion Rover. So at the time of creating the Wuthering Waves in 2028 video, I had Ragnarok in mind and knew a little bit about it because I was expecting the story to take place around Ragnarok. It has a lot to do with fire and fusion and the coming together of deities, so that is why I thought there is a possibility for it. So the other video is talking about Fusion Rover and version 4.0, or what we think version 4.0 will be. This video is talking about Ragnarok and how it perfectly aligns with what we know already about Septimont. It's enough yapping from me, enjoy the video. Okay, so I just want to add in this part before we begin, and that is to answer the question, why Ragnarok? Now, because we know that Kuro is taking Greco-Roman mythology as a basis for rinascita, we don't know how much of a basis it will be for other countries, but we know that it will still be present, just not as obvious or as fundamental as it is in rinascita. When we look at Greco-Roman mythology, the only real time or place in the story writing and literature talking about a group of warriors or heroes on the same power level is when there is reference to Elysium. Now Elysium itself, there are two versions of it, or two realms of Elysium, and that's why we have two realms of Septimont. We have Kartathia's realm and we have the other realm that Rover is in. The problem in literature is there's not a very deep story around Elysium or a general consensus for Elysium and the story around it. That's why we already have two realms of Elysium. So what story writers do when there's a bunch of heroes that are the main focus and there's no real big power gap between different tiers or different groups of people, like there are Threnodians, Sentinels and Resonators, then writers look towards Ragnarok and Norse mythology. And this is because in Norse mythology, their gods are deemed killable. If we want a Norse mythology counterpart of Elysium, that would be Ragnarok and Valhalla. And this video will serve as proof of this concept and probably explain what are the possibilities for Septimont's lore. Alright, so the plan of action is to read the story of Ragnarok just briefly, and on screen you'll be seeing all the references and in-game footage from version 2.4's trailer and the special program that symbolizes or visualizes what is being said. After we cover the story, then there is a section about Cristoforo and how he relates to Ragnarok. The story of Ragnarok begins with the death of Balder, the god of light and most widely beloved of Odin's sons. And yes, this is the same Balder that is used as a concept for Baldur's Gate. When Balder foresees his death in a dream, his mother secures oaths from all creatures, including fire, water, metal, trees, stones, and illnesses, not to harm Balder. So essentially she was looking for a way, or found a way, to make him immortal by making all the creatures take an oath not to harm him. So already we have a little bit of foul play by Frigg, his mother, by finding a way to change his fate or control his fate, kind of like match fixing his life. This is something similar in Septimont that has been teased, that there is a bit of cheating in the gladiator fights, possibly relating to the death of this Resonator NPC who has the name Oral on her shoulder pad. Ragnarok's story continues by saying only the mistletoe is thought too young and slender to take the oath, so it's the only thing that can harm Balder. Now a mistletoe is something that is shown with whether it's a golden mistletoe or whether it's a golden bow, we don't know. It could be both or symbolize both. We know that a bow is important to the Septimont and rinascita storyline because we have the golden bow from the essay of the Regnesi drama, and we have the bow of legions. In Ragnarok, it is through the trickster Loki that the blind god Hoth hurls a shaft of a mistletoe at Balder to end his life. Balder is then sent to the realm of the goddess of death known as Hel, or as Marvel put it, Hela. Is this character Hel or Hela that says that she will restore Balder to the mortal realm or the world of the living if all things would weep for him. In Wuthering Waves, we have something that kind of suggests this, and it is when we see Frolova in the trailer. On the left side, we have the Septimontian script. Keep in mind, we have a Solara script, we have a Rinascitan or a Gunnan script, and we have a Septimont script. It is a little bit weird with the Septimont one because we don't know when exactly they use it. It's kind of like only for the gladiator theme stuff that they use the Septimont one. In this scene, the transcript, the Septimont transcript, is flipped around, so you first have to flip it before you can cipher it or translate it. The bottom line will translate to plea for help. The top line is cut off a bit. The two words we can make out is my way. So there is this parallel that Hel, who is the goddess of death, made all living things weep for Balder, and in Wuthering Waves we have this parallel with Frolova shown and the text plea for help and something my way, suggesting that it's on Frolova's terms. In Ragnarok, all creatures then weep except for one being Loki. This means that Balder was not released or restored to the realm of the living, which heralds an unusually harsh winter that lasted for 3 years. This winter is called the Fimbul Winter. Now 3 years is quite significant in Wuthering Waves because we have a 4-year period between the Aegon of Champions. So the 3-year period between the Aegon of Champions, we could have some symbolism or some type of Fimbul Winter or effects of the Fimbul Winter. Because of this winter, resources became scarce, which led to people becoming greedy and violent, and humanity, so not the deities, nearly completely wiped each other out. In the story it says, over all the world there shall be mighty battles, and brothers shall slay each other for greed's sake. In Septimont we have the gladiator fights, which would be the mighty battles, and people slaying each other for greed's sake. While we don't know the entire motive for the Aegon of Champions, we know that people are slaying each other. Now this next part is pretty important in Ragnarok. During this time, there is a constant twilight, and eventually the sun, moon, and stars are hidden from sight. And in Ragnarok, it is specifically said the sun and the moon, which in Wuthering Waves we know relates to Augusta and Juno. Twilight is also represented with Frolova and her Lycoris. After this winter, so after the 3-year period, the next event that occurs are the earthquakes. These earthquakes were so bad that they broke the bonds and shackles that held two very strong forces of darkness, the wolf known as Fenrir and the serpent known as Jormungandr, and I hope I got that name right. So if we go to Wuthering Waves, we have two characters, two resonators, who can represent Fenrir and Jormungandr. The obvious one that I'm sure we all know of is Lupa, representing a giant wolf or a powerful destructive wolf. We know that Frolova prophesies and says that Lupa, or most likely Lupa, is going to bring upon the third wave of the dark tide. Or in other words, she is going to bring upon destruction. This is the exact thing that Fenrir did, is bring upon destruction. The other creature is Jormungandr, the massive sea serpent or snake. Now there is a resonator that represents this, and this would be Galbrena. She has earrings of a snake, and she does return with the rising dark tide. So this parallel of a wolf and a serpent is already aligning with Ragnarok. After the wolf and the serpent have caused a bit of destruction, the sky will then split apart, and Surtr, the fire giant, will strike down. The first thing Surtr will do is destroy the Bifrost, which prevents people from leaving the area or leaving the realm. So everything there is bound to be destroyed. Luckily for Loki, he knows a secret escape route just like in the movies, but it's played in a different part than in Ragnarok. After this event takes place, then it's the main battle that occurs, where deities, the big deities, the well-known ones, they all start to perish and fall in battle, left, right and center. Odin is swallowed by Fenrir, so Lupa's wolf, and Thor is poisoned by the serpent or Galbrena. So after all of these deities fall in this massive battle, Surtr raises his sword and does one last swing to set the world ablaze, thus destroying the living realm. In the story, or in Ragnarok, it says, "Thus the world ends in darkness as the earth sinks into the sea." So after the living realm is set ablaze or burns, it is then submerged in water. The same way that Frolova mentions a third dark tide will occur thanks to Lupa. This pretty much sums up the story of Ragnarok and all the parallels that have been shown so far in Septimont. Whether it is true that Septimont is going to be based on the events of Ragnarok, we will see. I don't think it will be a one-to-one rewrite from Guru Games. I think they're using important events and storyline and pieces of information correlation, and they're using it in their own story for Septimont. And so apart from the storytelling or the story of Ragnarok, it's also the prophecy of Ragnarok that aligns with Septimont. The prophecy of Ragnarok was given or told to Odin by a creature known as a Volva. Now a Volva is basically a creature that can foresee the future or see the future and then write down and prophesize about it. Now the fact that we have somebody who prophesizes the third chapter or the final chapter of the Dark Tide being Cristoforo, this would suggest that he is a seer, or his symbolism in the storytelling is as a seer. And now with version 2.4's trailer or story trailer, we can prove that he is indeed a seer, thanks to the birds that are flying around him. Now there are two possibilities for what this bird could be. The first is a raven and the other is a crow, both belonging to the same genus. In storytelling, literature and mythology, there is a difference, a significant difference between these two birds and what they symbolize. Game of Thrones demonstrates the difference between a raven and a crow pretty well. Bran, who is the cripple boy, is a seer and his powers are connected to a three-eyed raven. So the symbolism of a raven being able to see the future and prophesize is demonstrated here in Game of Thrones. Likewise, the Night's Watch, the people who watch out for the dead, are referred to as crows. And this reflects the behavior of real crows that circle around the bodies of the dead, so they kind of watching for the dead. It's a play on that concept or that symbolism. So with Cristoforo being able to see and write down this kind of future and prophecy about the Dark Tide, and being a playwright, that would suggest that the bird is a raven and not a crow. Now if you remember all the way in CBT1, there is a cutscene at the very beginning when you log into the game of a Fraxidus member with a bird. And because the camera pans into the eye of the bird, this does suggest that it's a raven and that this is the seer. So this may have originally been Cristoforo. That is all for this video on Septimont and Ragnarok and the correlation that may be there. Again, this is all speculation and we'll see whether it turns out to be true. I don't think it will be a full rewrite of this taking Ragnarok and putting it in Wuthering waves. I think the key elements and events will be rewritten to fit the story of Septimont, because we don't really have a focus on sentinels, we just have a focus on warriors. And the focus of Ragnarok was just on the deities. There was no major power difference. Let me know your thoughts down below and I will see you in the next video.